An NHL insider reveals the Vancouver Canucks are actively trying to trade Ilya Mikheyev, and the asking price to dump his contract might shock some fans. And we also get a huge report from Elliot Friedman that Zadorov is most likely on his way out of Vancouver. We'll get into that later on this episode. Before we start, I just want to say shout out to the almost 2,700 of you that are subscribed. Just 14 days from the NHL draft, we're trying to hit 3,000. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll be all off season into next season, giving you updates from all around the Canucks. So make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. But with that, let's hop straight into the first topic today, which is Canucks shopping Ilya Mikheyev. So we do get a report from Frank Chiravelli, and he did just briefly touch on and say the Canucks have been working to move Mikheyev since shortly after their playoff run concluded. They also offered him to teams around the trade deadline. After a tough playoffs, Mikheyev's contract is gumming up the works on Vancouver's offseason. They aren't more aggressively pursuing multiple pending free agents until they can get clear view of their cap picture. Mikheyev scored just one goal in the final 61 playoff games of the season, including playoffs, so regular season and playoffs, but which is hard to do. As a result, teams are asking the Canucks to attach an asset to Mikheyev to move him, something they're likely balking at. And the biggest thing with this is obviously teams are looking at getting multiple pieces to dump this contract. This could be a first round pick, this could be a multiple picks, this could be a top prospect. Teams are going to ask for a lot, especially when you look at cap hit. And Griffin, what's your thoughts on the Canucks maybe moving on from one of their top prospects to dump this contract?
I think it would be a smart move because, like we've touched on basically since the season ended, is how many UFAs they have to bring back next season and how many faces they have to make happy, not just the players, but also fans. And I think Ilya Mikheyev is a face that I don't think fans would like to see come back. I think he had a fairly disastrous season last season. I mean, only one goal in 61 games, no points in the playoffs. And then in a game that was a must-win game in Game 7, he did have to fill in for Brock Boeser. He was on the first line. He was playing with players that should have elevated him, and I'm not saying that those guys aren't capable of elevating him, but he should have rose to the occasion. He was definitely one of those passengers on the train that was the Vancouver Canucks season this year. Rick Tocchet was saying how there was about 7 guys. We mentioned before how during when he said that he was definitely one of those guys and needed to show up. And he's very fast. He's like the Luis Mendoza of the Canucks. It's just he can't get it done anywhere else. It's just speed, and that seems to be it. So it does make sense for them to move on from him, especially when you could go out and get a guy like Gensel, or to keep someone like Lindholm, or to just keep someone like Joshua even, because like we've said many times before, team chemistry is everything, and I think keeping the core guys together is going to be a big part of it, and anyone who's dead weight, just get rid of them.
Yeah, because that's the biggest thing. I love that you brought up Jake Gensel, because if moving on from a guy like Mikheyev is the reason or the only thing holding them back from going out and acquiring this top winger that can produce in the playoffs, you can see that Mikheyev only put up 31 total points, 11 goals, 20 assists. He did have a good start to the year and then completely cooled off. This is a guy who did score 20 goals before with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 53 games, but since then, after signing in Vancouver, he's kind of steadily declined. Yes, he came off an injury with Toronto going into Vancouver, but things are starting to catch up on him. The biggest thing is looking at Mikheyev's contract. He's making $4.7 million this next upcoming season and $4.7 the season after that. It is quite a bit of money, and the biggest thing is looking at guys like Jake Gensel. And the thing I kind of want to ask you too, Griffin, if you had to attach a first, I know the Canucks don't have a first this year, but if you had to attach next year's first to get rid of Mikheyev and it meant you were 100% getting Jake Gensel in free agency, are you going to do it?
1,000%, without hesitation, without question. In my last video, I covered how vital it would be to get a guy like Gensel. He could be that point per game player, and he smell like everything he touches is production, whether it's scoring himself or creating opportunities for guys. He's got a great plus minus rating, and that is to me the most one of the most underrated stats in hockey. I think when you look at that, you can really see the true measure of a player and what they're able to do with their time on the ice, as well as time on ice. That's very telling, more for like defensemen. But I think a guy like Gensel would be so electric on this team, and Mikheyev was not electric. He was anything but. Again, he had a good first quarter of the season, but then just completely fizzled out. And I think Gensel would be that vital, revitalizing piece that the Vancouver Canucks need going into next season to make a better run at the Stanley Cup next year than they did this year.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is when you're looking at this offseason, the Canucks do have a projected of $24 million in cap space. This is with no one signed that's currently UFAs and RFAs being Hronek. But the biggest thing is with Tucker Pullman, if he does stay on LTIR for the entirety of next season, you are looking at $26.5 million in cap space. If you do dump a guy like Mikheyev, this bumps you up to $31,000. And the biggest thing is a lot of people are going to say, no, we don't want to move on from picks. We don't want to move on from prospects. I'd rather move a pick than a prospect because you know what you have with the prospect. You kind of buy lottery tickets with the draft. You have to use these picks. But the biggest thing is you draft players you like. You draft players you know you want in this organization. So if you move on from a first for a guy like Jake Gensel, you can kind of look at it in the way of saying, hey, we're attaching a first to Mikheyev, trading him out, but then you bring in a guy like Jake Gensel, so you're technically just moving the first for a guy like Jake Gensel. If you want to look at it that way, just make things easier. But what your guys' thoughts? Are you hoping the Canucks actively do continue shopping a guy like Mikheyev? What's the most you would get up? What team would you like to trade him to? Would you like to bring back maybe a project player to see if they can turn things around? But with that, let's hop straight into the second topic today, which is Zadorov Gone. So there was reports coming from Elliot Freeman, and he said on Oilers Now podcast yesterday, I heard they weren't far away from Zadorov's asking price, but it got to the point where neither side was willing to budge. I believe Zadorov would have left money on the table to go to Vancouver. We also get another part of this where he said, I would say it appears unlikely, though I don't think they're as far as apart on Zadorov as they were Lindholm. So just these two quotes, it seems like the Canucks are going to lose both Zadorov and Lindholm to free agency. And Griffin, what's your thoughts on that as well?
I don't think it comes as too much of a surprise. I think with the news of Lindholm yesterday, I think that was very telling as to where he's going to go and already rejecting the 7x7. So already knew that Lindholm was probably on his way out. And like I said in the last video, where if he is the one that you have to let go as far as big money guys go between him and Zadorov, I think he's the one that you let go more. Zadorov's definitely integrated himself more within this Vancouver team, I find, and the city as well, and with the fans seem to like him more than Lindholm. So if you're trying to keep one of them around for as far as team chemistry goes, I think you let Lindholm walk. But it would suck losing two of these guys. I think it's even more unfortunate to hear that Zadorov was willing to leave money on the table to stay in Vancouver, and Vancouver just was not able to meet that number. That is fairly disappointing, where they were so close to getting him to stay on a fairly discounted deal compared to what the big amount he was asking for initially. So I think it was a missed opportunity potentially by Vancouver, but if they're able to bring in a guy like Brendan Dillon that we keep mentioning, or a guy like Joel Edmondson who'd be a veteran presence, I think that would be something that Vancouver can kind of live with letting him go. Again, you can't replace that size, but you can replace the morale and the just how the fans will gravitate towards a new player. I think Brendan Dillon would be that guy that they would welcome in with open arms just by him being from BC alone.
Yeah, no, the biggest thing too with Zadorov, I find, is yes, losing him is going to suck. Yes, trading for a guy like Lindholm at deadline just to lose him in free agency will hurt as well. But the big thing you need to look at with this as well, the management doesn't want to dump a lot of cap into these players that might be asking for too much. I mean, you see guys like Mikheyev, who has got paid quite a bit of money. Sorry for clicking on every screenshot except for the right one. But you see guys like Mikheyev that once in the past got paid too much money. So having the management not looking to pay that much into the salary cap on players that they don't think will fit, or players that might be paid too much, is a bright sign to look at. And what your guys' thoughts on Zadorov leaving? I know obviously he's going to be missed dearly. I mean, you look at the stats alone, including the 8 points he put up in the playoffs and the fact that he was laying the body constantly on anyone in front of him. Let us know down in the comments what your thoughts on Zadorov leaving, and talking in the comments, we'll get into everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And the comment today comes from Canuck Tony. He said, I'd pay Hronek before Lindholm. I kind of agree with this as well. I mean, obviously Lindholm seems like he's on his way out, but finding a right-handed defenseman in the NHL that's a top two defenseman is quite hard. And Griffin, what's your thoughts on this as well?
Definitely agree with that there. I would definitely pay Hronek before Lindholm, and arguably I'd probably pay Hronek before Zadorov, considering how much they're both asking for. And Hronek is someone where if it does come down to where they can't keep Zadorov, Lindholm, and Hronek, I think that's something that they can live with if they can go and get a much cheaper defenseman that can be better for morale. But if they are able to keep Hronek, that's great. I would definitely, if I had my choice between the two of them, absolutely am picking Hronek just because of the age, what he's asking for, and how much he was playing really well with Quinn Hughes. I think Quinn Hughes tends to bring out the best in everybody in general, but they did establish a really good chemistry early on in the season. Just something to build on going forward into next season if they can.
Yeah, exactly. And if you guys enjoy this and you want to leave a comment and you could be featured on the next episode as on Canucks Digest as comment today, make sure to go down and leave a comment while you're down there. Leave a like, share this with your friends, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 3,000 before the NHL draft, which is on the 28th, where the Canucks might be actively making moves. So be excited for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host Griffin. Take care.